Larger Neume groupings. What happens when you get more than 2 or 3 notes? Notice we just so far we've only discussed what happens when you have a clevis or a torculus. We can get those kind of short grouping, maybe up to 4 notes, because you take 2 clevises put together. Fine, all right. But what happens when you get a string of notes together? The larger elements, the rhythmically and structurally important notes, are indicated by 3 basic kinds of graphic separation. Nowadays, most of the German scholars talk about Neume groupings. That's why I put that thing under the heading groupings. It's 2 ways of looking at the same thing, because either I'm looking at the notators lifting a pen and made a graphic break separation, or I'm looking at the group that was created by that. Okay? So let's take a look at the 3 groups. Number 1 is initial graphic separation, where the first note is separated from all the notes that follow. An example there is, see the circled note on Jerusalem at the end? Jerusalem. Okay, so the first note over that syllable is separated graphically from what follows. In other words, the pen came up. It'd be like the conductor goes like this. Lam. Try that. Lam. Yeah. Or he could have done lam, lam. Instead of he goes lam. See, he hesitated on that first note rather than go Jerusalem. I could do that. Lam to Clevi. Lam. No, he goes lam. And if you trace it as you sing it, you feel the difference. That's why it's good for you to do the opposite. Let's say the opposite of what's there would be lam, lam. Instead it's lam. And so there you see that important first note. The structurally important note gets emphasized. Its characteristic of being a point of departure for the melodic movement, acts like a springboard. Then median graphic separation. And let's say the other type is final over on the next page. So those 3, initial, median, and final. Let's take a look at the median. The immediate comes in 3 basic flavors. In the midst of a melodic ascent, at the peak of the melodic curve, and at the top of the next page, in the midst of a melodic descent. Anytime the pen breaks in those situations, you've got a structure pitches that is just before that break. It works the opposite way. We have bar lines. The important note is what on the right-hand side of the bar line. But this would be like putting it on the left side of the bar line. And that's what fooled so many people. They put it by what the director's hand stops. And so did the pen on the guy notating. It stopped, and he picks up again. That's what goes. Okay, so those are the 3. And then notice what I put underneath. A graphic separation at the base of the melodic curve is neutral. It could be either or. We don't know unless they put a T on the note, meaning tenere, or A, augeti, and lone, or they put a C, a celeritere, or they put an N, non tenere. You know, we just don't know. In other words, when in doubt, move on. Kind of like the famous one for organists. When in doubt, play legato. That's what they used to tell us. You know what happens to Bach when you play it legato? Mush. Okay? Well, the same thing in chant. Unless we make the proper breaks in sound at the right places, then we don't know what we're saying either. It's the same thing as what happened to Bach. I remember being taught to play Bach legato because they weren't quite sure where all the articulations should be. So when in doubt, play legato. Be done with it. I got bored. And then, okay. Then, of course, I went to Europe, studied an Italian master who told me exactly where to articulate every little point on it so that all notes then function like those pre-tonic, tonic, so forth. Okay, let's go back to the median now. Rhythmically significant at the melodic ascent. We have omnis. We have a series of 3 pitches going up in which if we look at the stuff on top from Lone, by the way, 239 is the top, the notes in black on top. The ones in the bottom should be red, of course. If you're in your triplex, they are red. Of course, when they come up to the duplicating machine, they come out black. So we have two dots, meaning real quick notes on the first two notes. On the F, A, up to the C, go F, A, C, ha, 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 da, da, dum, oh, 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 try that. Oh, oh. So there's your rhythm. Knowing that the first two notes are not held at all. They run up, almost speeding up, burn rubber to get to C, if you wish. If you were a teenager, I'd say burn rubber to get up there. You get la la la, like that. Okay, move. And then, of course, with that energy, I can then spin out, as I did on the initial graphic separation, la la la, that part. Now the next peak of the melodic curve, and the Neume, no, okay. Oh, that's a classic example of what I talked about before. Okay, let's analyze that one very carefully. You've got a clevis with a stretched two notes. We got the zigzag of the quilisma, which happens to be upside down question mark in Lone, followed by a virga with a tenete over it. Okay, and that, of course, is that circled note. So you get man. Let's try singing that. Man. And it yeah. Now, notice the two dots and the parectus after that circled note. We have a circled note. I put a circle around it. Then we have the two notes stacked on top of each other, podatus. We have a clevis and then a square note. Okay? The clevis and the square note are put together as if it's one note, okay, or one sign. And that's what Guido said. I'm not sure whether that first C is not a B natural going back to C. In other words, he says, it's sung so lightly that I can't really hear it clearly. So he would have had a little problem with that. La, 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 la. So sing that first bottom C after in that parectus is very loud. La, 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 la. Try that. La, 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 la. Now let's lead up to it. La, 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 la. Try it. Be sure to repercuss. Separate those two squares. Whenever you have repeated notes, and notice where they're occurring. They occur almost exclusively, I say almost exclusively on an F or a C, the two structure pitches in all 8 modes. They're always an important note, no matter which mode you're in. And that's precisely the clef signs, the C clef and the F clef. There's a reason why they got picked to mark off the lines. Notice you don't have a G clef in chant. You have an F clef and a C clef, no G clef or D clef or anything else. And it's because those are the two structure pitches. But what are they? They're the pitches that ride above the minor third in a pentatonic scale. They're over the gap, and they're always strong. After you've sung enough pieces, you begin to realize they're the ones you could hang on to. They're the grab bar, if you wish. If you're like my age, you like to have a grab bar in case you slip. And or our ancestors in the jungle, they always had a good branch to hang on to, a structure branch. If they missed, they were real trouble. You know, they got to grab this one, swing to that. Well, you get this in gymnastics. You know, when people get the circuit to swing from one bar to the other. Everything else in between, you'll fall. You must be able to grab this one and get to that one. And so you get the same thing here. These are like grab bars. We call them structure. I call them structure pitches. Okay, I don't want to get too much there. I want to get the basics out here on this. Pardon me. Fine. So we've got now the peak of the melodic curve. Notice that means the note before and the note after that break is the important note. It's called the peak of the curve. The next one on the top of the next page is somewhere in the midst of a descending melody. Okay, this one also begins with what? A initial graphic separation. The virga with the dot after it. See, Salam added those dots knowing that note's got to be awfully important. The irony of it is that it simply doubles it in some interpretations. But that's not the point. It's a springboard. I don't want to sit on it for 2 counts. I want to move from it. I want it to spring me out like this. So you get 2, 2, os, da 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 dum dum, 2, os. Okay, 2. That's all we're interested in is 2. Oh yeah, on that one. What doesn't help us is that vertical episema. I would like to put a horizontal episema over the note after it. If you want to do that, thanks to handouts, you can mark your own copies down. And I would white out the vertical episema, and I would put a horizontal episema over the note after it. Because take a look at lone. It has the big, long virga. If I draw that, I got what? Dot, oriscus, long virga. And the oriscus is that famous one that looks like a Z or looks like an S circle like that. And always it drives to the note afterwards and does so by a crescendo. It's always kind of doing that to it. It does the opposite of the quilisma. The quilisma slides to the next note quietly. You go ta, and this goes ta. Try that. Do la 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 la. Okay. La la la. And now let's do la la la. Right? La la. Do the skid. La. There's a quilisma. And now the oriscus goes la. Ready? La. There you are. So we got
the oriscus again.
The oriscus. I want a crescendo on that second note.
And do you want the slide as with quill?
I want a separate note. So 3 pitches. Yeah. Right. The slide is where we don't hear the pitch. We don't hear the fixed pitch. Do that. But that's not what we got here. What we've got here is a oriscus, so actual pitch. Okay?
And the oriscus is notated as?
It's that funny looking thing.
The dot with the...
Right after the dot is the funny looking thing, which looks almost like a misshapen S.
Okay.
Yeah, bird's eye is good.
Yeah. And of course in St. Gall it looks like a semicircle. Like they didn't finish the whole thing. Instead of going this way and back out, they just went like that. But it's the same thing, it's the oriscus. Well, you know, these penmen, they got pretty cute about how they could shorthand things. And they're probably getting tired of their pen writing all this stuff. They go dot like that instead of dot. I'm trying to think psychologically because we do know that in the margins of some of those manuscripts of St. Gall and Meinsiedel, you said probably late in the afternoon on a cold December day, they're talking about how cold it is in the scriptorium, and they hope that there's something decent at supper tonight. You know, and they make comments in the margin like that. They're very human. And so we know that the notator too do way of how to shorten that oriscus, by golly. We'll go dot half moon and go up like this. They're human. So underneath all that stuff, some very real human beings. Okay, any question about what then a melodic descent? Normally when that melodic descent, it's sort of what delays the fall. It keeps you from just dropping too quickly. Instead of go la 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 la. Now what I've got structurally then is A, F, G, F, C. Okay? They're kind of walking you down. Later on, I'm going to do more Schenker style stuff of tearing this apart and showing you, prolongation of structure pitches is what Schenker is all about. Yeah.
You were saying earlier, a little while ago, that the C clef and the F clef, okay, are structural notes throughout any piece of sorts.
Yeah.
Would that, so when you have the C clef, as in this excerpt that we're looking at, would the fa be a structural note that you could
Yes.
gravitate towards, even though it's not the clef in that?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
In other words, both F and C are always and everywhere structure pitches.
Okay.
You,
It can be
you're
used
safely
as temporary
you're safely
resting
going to
points.
be able to embroider around it. You can
Okay.
do a double neighbor, do a truculus on it, or a parectus, or do some fun things.
Okay.
In other words, if you're a jazz musician, it's something you can hang on to. It's part of the chart
Okay.
that I can work with. If it's embraceable you that you're decorating, well, there's the original melody note, and Charlie Parker has fun decorating. He has two versions of it on the archive one in Washington. I like to play both of those and see which one the kids like best, when I was teaching music appreciation. And he had two versions of Embraceable You, and they're both improvisations on that tune. And you get chant structure pitches that are embellished and embroidered, improvised upon. So I used to listen to, it's for my recreation up at IU when I was on sabbatical way back there in the late 80s. That's how far back, okay? And they have the jazz musicians area, and they would be all day long in there drilling themselves on various ways to improvise on the chart. In other words, a set of structure pitches. And they just keep working on them. It's fun to listen to them. Oh, try that one. Oh, try this one. And they keep. And in other words, they wanted to have it subconscious, and so it'd be second nature when they went out to perform. They didn't have to look at any sheet of music at all, and they don't. They get out there and they do it from memory. See, from second nature practically. And we would almost have to get to that in chant as we get to the pieces this week. Certain ones we really will need to almost memorize them to do it well. We can analyze to death, but until we get the suckers down in second nature, we can't really do them. They're virtuoso stuff, They're for real good singers who like to show their talents and get them out there. Okay, now, I did a summary on this. Final graphic separation. On this one, unfortunately, I didn't put an example. It's on page 37, line 2 in your triplex. Well, it's line 2 it's line 2 in the bottom here, Ave Maria. It's on the word grazia, of grazia plena. And while we're there, let's analyze it. We've got a clevis with an epizema. Everybody, it's on page 36 going to 37, 36.
Okay.
And,
Line 8.
well, in fact, it is 37. Go over to 37, ventris. That's probably the clearest example. And what's interesting is Solem puts an incise mark. I was told that most people are taught that you don't take a breath at the incise. Well, Solem was putting one in there, so you will. Why? Because there's a graphic separation there at that incise. See the repeated note? There's a diamond on the left-hand side, and then you start with the square notes going back up to G again. You get D, D, E, F, G, V. Oh, and there alone does that wonderful circle. Look at that spin up there. This is what's in the cartoon. That guy's doing this. He's got. So I've got tris. And again, it's not the first note on tris, it's the last note. Tris. What have I got? Double neighbor. In fact, multiple double. I got an F, A, F, A, again back to G. Actually, all I've got is ventris or ventris, but I want to decorate it. Ventris. Try it. Ventris. Now, ventris. And notice the spin on the notation above in lone. You have a quick podatus for the first two notes. Then we got a dotted note. And then we got the virga with the tail. See the spin where you have to go like that? Okay. If you do that as a director, what are the singers going to do? They're going to sit on that thing and do a little crescendo. Yeah. If I do that to them, let's try it. Ready? There. And that's called final graphic separation. Namely, it's in the midst of a Neume group. Oh, wait. Neume. A Neume is all the notes over a single syllable.
All the signs.
I have to be careful how I'm using my terminology. So therefore, I'm using groups within a Neume, or Neume grouping. So I've got these groups. I got this first group that runs up to G and then does a quick flip to A, but that's the dot. That's the first dot. Okay. So, and then break sound. Tris. Okay. Any questions what we've got
The
done?
top one, the three dots that are on top of each other after the spin, and then underneath that, what's underneath that?
It's a tiny version of the unchinus the dentist took. Remember what I put on the board here?
But it doesn't add up to the number of notes that are underneath, does it? I don't see that note in the notation.
Well, yes, you do. The top virga,
Yeah?
then two more dots, and then finally the unchinus, the diamond at the bottom.
Okay.
It adds
There's
up.
3 dots on the diamond.
There's 3 dots. 3 dots.
The first dot on the top, which note is that in?
That's the
That's the
virga.
verb at the top.
That's the
virga
virga.
at the top, okay. So the swirly note comes before the
That's
top
the
note.
G. That's the G.
Okay,
Oh.
that's what I got wrong. I thought the swirly note was the A, or the la.
It does. It looks that way in square notes, doesn't it? You can be totally misled by the square notes
Yeah.
and their diamonds. Totally misled. If you have, that's why we got to look at either lone or single or both.
So the first sign in the first sign in that line represents 3 of the notes below, is that correct?
2.
Two.
Two.
Okay.
The dot's the 3rd note.
The dot
The
is the
swirly's
third
the
note.
4th note.
The
Yeah.
swirly is the 4th note,
Mm-hmm.
which crescendos and accelerates into your.
It gives people time to rev the motor, if you wish. It's kind of like, it's kind of like teenagers, take the muffler off the thing and go. "Rum, rum." You do that kind of sound with this. Van. Yes, I think I know why. Because what are they doing? They're giving you tone painting, and blessed is the fruit of what?
Womb.
Your womb. You're giving birth. It's that push that a woman has to do to get you out. Okay? So you would all know all about shoving that out. You get
There's your tone pain.
there, baby comes out. Okay.
I could forget that.
This also seems to illuminate the line above that says a graphic separation at the base of the melodic curve is neutral. because in the loan, it looks like that bottom note D, in the loan, you're holding it a little bit, but in the St. Gall, you're getting right off it, it's very light.
Yeah, you just have a dot, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Two different ways of.
two different ways of looking at it.
So that first note could be sung lengthened, justified by the lone neumes.
In other words, I would move quick, I go, "Van," you know, I kind of run into that second repetition of the D. But Lone says, no, make sure that you stop long enough. You have 3 dots and then that little extra amount, as if you were ending a syllable. It's the same thing as if you ended a syllable. See, trees. Gorgeous little flourishing on all that. But again, it's hinting at almost visualizing a tone painting of the word ventris, of the womb.
So it's almost as if in Salem they were following the French method at the top, probably, when they put that insight mark.
Yeah. But ironically, when you study the manuals for singing chant, they tell you that the incise mark, you sing through it. And here, no. In fact, I think most incise marks indicate the end of some phrase or equivalent of a comma. They need to have a break in sound. I call it a break in sound. It's more like the quick catch breath you do, it sounds like only that you're articulating, that you're really not taking a breath, but you are. Let me give you the illustration. I learned that one from Fischer Dieskau, watching him sing German Lieder, where he didn't seem to take a breath. God, he was taking a breath all the time. You know, every time he was phrasing, he was taking a little breath like that, and it was a ventris, tui, and this was there, you know, and you got it in there all the time. He kept taking breaths all over the place.
Could you hear it in the room?
No, what you heard was articulation. You heard the break of sound. That's why I describe it as you need a break in the sound, which is tantamount to you taking a quick bounce, catch breath. And that's the way to make the break in sound. And I learned that in playing Bach, because the organist said, stop that legato, and I want you to get off that note so that I hear a little bit of he said, I want to see daylight between those fingers. I want to hear a little silence between those notes so that I can hear the beginning of the next note. Otherwise, you don't hear the beginning of the next note. And that's why here, we'll definitely want to stop the sound at that incise, and then we'll hear the beginning of the next rising series going up like that. So you get like that.
Could you point out all of the graphic separations in Venn?
Okay. The first graphic separation is that G, where it says spin and lone, okay? That's a graphic separation, right? And what would that be? In the midst of a melodic ascent. The notes before are lower and the notes after are higher. And that's the only one, because after that we just keep moving. Good.